Back here on the show to talk some more about another NFC team that is looking into 2024 to look a lot better than they did in 2023 because they have a lot of reason to do so, talking about the Chicago Bears and how they can turn all this potential, all of this hype into more production in 2024. Really, right now, if you followed the development, the rebuild of the Chicago Bears team and their entire roster, I think we're at almost as close as we can get to the peak of this team than we've ever seen at any point previously in this rebuild, because you see now that they have brought in guys just this offseason like Caleb Williams, obviously, DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, just all of those players this offseason, which is tremendous for this team at this point. But also, just off of last year, they had guys that stepped up for them or that they were added to this team as well in Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, Darnell Wright, DJ Moore, all having tremendous seasons and contributing a lot to the Chicago Bears team. And that was just last offseason or the one previous to that. They are really building this up pretty quickly, honestly. And that is a lot of credit going to their general manager, Ryan Poles, and how he made a lot of tough decisions, a lot of questionable ones at the time. But now I think it all has been paying off and leading up until this point where there is a lot of hype around this team. And I mentioned that hype because some of the betting markets also are showing a lot of belief in the Chicago Bears, because their over-under for 2024 in wins is set at 9.5 right now. And this is the first time that they've been expected to be a winning team since 2018. And that's pretty remarkable, I would say, for this Bears team, because there's been a lot of losing seasons in the last few years, and really they've shown some glimpses of it last year, the second half of the year after they traded for Montez Sweat. You could really see what this team could truly be with that potential again if they bunkered down and showed it all at one time. But now they finally got that piece that they were missing in Caleb Williams, their franchise quarterback, and it seems like you're almost running out of excuses now of to where to look on where this team could fail. Obviously, the biggest one is the inexperience of it all and getting all of them to play together and as a unit. But if you're just looking at it based on talent and on paper, it's hard to point out something that is really missing from this team, other than maybe the offensive line or something like that. They have really done a great job of doing that. But like I said on that point, on getting everything to mix together and culminate into something productive, Jaylon Johnson, who after 4 years of being on the Chicago Bears, not only got his extension this offseason, but he's been here long enough to see how this team went from very poor, very lackluster to now where they are right now. And he just wants to see results finally from this talented group. And it got him to say, I feel like I've been on some talented rosters to where we've had a lot of upside. I feel like for me, it's one of those things where I'm tired of just having upside and having potential. I want to be in a position where we actually go out there and we are that and not just what we're projected to be at. And he makes a good point, Jaylon Johnson there, speaking pretty clearly of what he wants to do and what his goals are for 2024, because again, like over the last 4 years in the NFL with the Chicago Bears, Jaylon Johnson has seen an 8-8 record, a 6-11 record, a 3-14 record, and just last year a 7-10 record, and the best year obviously being that 8-8 season where they finished second in the NFC North and were or they lost in the first round of the playoffs. And then since then, it's been 3 consecutive losing seasons for the Bears, and it hasn't looked good at all for them. But now, this isn't Jaylon Johnson. He mentioned it in the rest of that interview, saying that this isn't a proclamation from Johnson saying that this is our year by any means. He's not at that level yet. Obviously, that's unrealistic for the Chicago Bears team that still is pretty young in this process, but it is hard to point out a weakness, like I said before, and he's keeping the expectations realistic, honestly, now, because not only are they getting better, but you have to look at the entire NFC and how difficult it is just for them to be a winning team. For them to get over 9.5 wins, that's pretty high for a team, again, that is just finally got that missing piece and the most important piece to the puzzle finally added to their team for betting markets and betting, apps to set their over-under for wins at 9.5, I think is saying a lot. And not to put any conspiracy theories out there, but again, if they're setting it that high, maybe there's something there that you can look into the Bears, and maybe they have a chance. Maybe they come close. They won 7 games last year, and this year I don't think they have that tough of a schedule either. So I don't know. Maybe they come close. Maybe I'm being a little bit too delusional talking about the Bears, but overall, this defense really showed face for this team last year, at the end of last year, and it became their identity. But now, heading into 2024, I mentioned they finally got Caleb Williams in there, and now you can ask the question, I believe, of what is more crucial for this team to have happen in 2024 to get those results that Jaylon Johnson wants to see. Is it more crucial for them to have their defense or their offense play at a high level for them to reach the playoffs? And I think it is a close one to call, but overall, I would say that this offense really needs to be more important to this team, or needs to perform better than the defense in order for them to reach the playoffs, in my opinion. I just talked a lot about their defense, talking about how impressive they were last year after adding Montez Sweat and having playmakers at each level of that team on defense, but it just goes back to that idea of, this new modernized NFL in this day and age with having a great offense, to me, is really the bare minimum that a true contender needs to have, or at least just a playoff team needs to have. You need to show a consistent level of decent offense, or at least putting up close to 20 points at the absolute minimum. You need a decent offense to do that. You need to be putting up at least 20 points, and then once you get to a good defense, I think that could be the separator or the difference maker later on in the playoffs, if that makes sense. The offense will get you there. The offense, if it's consistent enough, will elevate you to that next level of being considered a true contender to your division, to your conference, and maybe even the Super Bowl. We're not saying the Bears are going to make it there, but that's sort of the progression that needs to happen, and I believe that the offense is more important for that reason, just because they need to be more consistent than the Bears' defense needs to be, in my opinion. Like I said, a great defense will usually, if you're overly dependent on them to perform at a top 5, top 3 level, it's just unrealistic, and eventually you see in a lot of these teams that make the playoffs or are considered good teams that their defense really just loses its legs later in the season, or just late in the game, honestly. If they're constantly out there, if they're on the field more times than the offense, it doesn't do any team any good, and you can't just win that way. You can't expect the defense to go out there every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, and expect them to not falter at some point without a break. You look at just this last playoffs, the Browns, the Steelers, the 49ers, and the Ravens. Each of them, in each of the games that they got eliminated, you saw a lot of tiredness in that defense. Talking about the Browns against the Texans, their defense was out there a lot more. Joe Flacco was turning the ball over. They were getting stifled on offense, and that led to the Texans running away with it and just destroying them there towards the end. Then with the Steelers as well, great defense, kind of kept it close at some points in that game against the Bills, but again, their defense, if their offense isn't putting up points with Mason Rudolph, the Bills end up running away with it like they did at home. The Baltimore Ravens, same thing. They kept them in the game the entire time, but the moments that their offenses needed to step up and score points, they didn't do so, so they lost the game to the Chiefs. And the 49ers as well in the Super Bowl, great defensive performance in the first half, stifling any offense that the Chiefs could get going, but then really not to their fault, but overall it serves the same purpose. Their defense starts to fall apart a little bit, starts to loosen up in the second half. You see the offense not really giving them a break, or cutting them a break, I should say, with going, I think, 3 straight drives, going 3 and out. That leads to the Chiefs getting some momentum, and now they're in a rhythm now, and it cost them the game, obviously, there towards the end. So all those scenarios kind of play into what I'm trying to say. It is a lot of pressure on a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. You do acknowledge that fact, but that's why they invested so much in this offense. That's why they brought in Keenan, Rome Odunze, DeAndre Swift, and their offensive line is also getting better. It has gone better over the last few years. it's not going to be a smooth process whatsoever, but you'd hope that it makes the just period of getting over the hump, turning that corner, you hope that it makes it a little smoother and a little bit quicker when you support him with so many talented players around him. But again, by any means is that going to be easy. There's going to be some bad moments this year with Caleb. There's going to be a lot of great moments, I believe. But you're going to have to take the good with the bad at this point and accept the pressure, because this team is very close, I believe, to getting in a spot where they could at least compete for that 7th spot in the playoffs. But again, going back to the defensive side of things, you need that offense to get to that point, because if you look around just their division and in the conference, you have the Lions, great offense, the Packers, another great offense as well. Even the Minnesota Vikings, too. There might be some questions at quarterback, but their supporting cast is very good. And then outside of just their division, you look at the Rams. The Falcons got a lot better on offense. The Eagles look like an absolute juggernaut. The 49ers are obviously still there. All of them have great offenses to still go with their defense. And at the end of the day, those defenses will create a difference as well. I'm just thinking about it now. In that game against with the Lions and the 49ers, the 49ers stunk up the joint at home. Then in the second half, the Detroit Lions offense stifled a little bit, couldn't get anything going. The 49ers defense, kind of stood tall, and that cost the Lions the game there at the end of the day. So over and over, I'm showing these examples of offenses needing to stay consistent, or else it can quickly turn on you and just flip the game on its head if you have 3 straight drives of just punting, turning the ball over on downs. That could catch up to you, especially when you're playing a good team. That's why I believe the Bears need their offense right now at this point more than their defense, because you have confidence in their defense already. You've shown that they're able to get some stops consistently last year at the end of it. But now you need the offense to kind of step up and match them in terms of production to get what you'd expect to get out of this year, which is improvement. That's the biggest thing, seeing the improvement, competing in these games. That's the overarching goal for me, but we'll see where the offense goes, and we'll see how slow or how quickly this offense gets into a rhythm in 2024. But Jaylon Johnson wants to see it. He's pretty confident that it could happen this year, so we'll take his word for it. I think they could get it done, but that'll be that for the first half of the show. We're going to head to a quick break right now, and on the other side, the second half of the show, I have a scenario that I wanted to throw at you guys. Would it be more likely that the 49ers pay Brandon Ayuk and then subsequently trade Deebo Samuel, or is it more likely that they trade Brandon Ayuk, end up trading him for, say, Devontae Adams, and bringing Devontae Adams over to the Bay to join Deebo Samuel? I'm going to get more into that, where that's coming from me, when we return from the break. We'll be right back after this.